Welcome to The Hop. This is David Charles Allen, Realtor of Village Properties in Santa Barbara with my good friend and co-host, Patty Teal. Patty, how you doing?
I'm doing great, David. It's good to be here.
Great to be here. So let's celebrate this week's weather. We're looking ahead to mostly sunny days in the mid to high 60s. The winter swells are starting to fill in a little bit with some fun days this past week. Always keep an eye out on the buoys. No huge swell to report, but could be some fun days depending on the tide and the direction of the swell coming in. So there has been, since our last show, there's been a little movement in interest rates as well for mortgages. The conforming 30-year fix is down to 2.75% again. And what's interesting is after being stuck at about 3% for several weeks now, the non-conforming 30-year jumbo rate is down to 2.875.
Good news.
So as we've talked about before, you never know what interest rates are going to do. Some people are saying they could go a little lower. Some people are saying we could see interest rates at 3.5% next year. It's really impossible to know.
Well, thanks for keeping us updated.
Yeah, of course. So where we discuss the statistics, we'll jump right into that. We've have 15 coming soon listings up from last week. We have 51 new listings and up from last week from 44. So that's a great sign. We have 56 pending. So that's up from 32 last week. So we're seeing a lot of activity out there, whether it's new listings and pendings as well. So even though we're coming into the slow time of the year with all the holidays, that's kind of all thrown out the window with all this stuff happening around us. So we'll just continue to keep you updated with the flow of everything and see where this takes us.
Yeah, maybe people are rushing to get in before the holidays. Maybe that's what this is about. I don't know.
It's very true. Rushing in before potential second lockdown too is what the fear out there is. So, just stay consistent, feel with what resonates with you, and continue to move on along with this, everything going around us. Today, we have a great guest, musician and business owner, Chris Foley. He was inspired as a teenager to become a musician and transitioned into owning a high-end leather accessory store in Healdsburg, California. How are you doing today, Chris?
Pretty good.
So
good
happy
to hear.
have you here.
Happy to have you as well.
Thank you.
So coming from Germany, how was your experience moving here and starting a new chapter?
Well, like you said, I grew up in Germany. I started playing guitar when I was 12, blues and rock. And then I think when I was about 19, 20, I heard Wes Montgomery and got really into jazz. And I always knew I really want to study jazz. And at that time, there wasn't too much going on in Europe in regards to school. And I went to the Swiss jazz school for a while. And of course, as a jazz musician, your dream is to come to the United States where the music originated, And so over the years, I heard about this amazing school in Los Angeles, the Musicians Institute, where all the big name musicians, Joe Pass, Pat Metheny, Howard Roberts, they all were there either as a teacher or as a clinician. I met my wife, who's American. I met her in Germany. So when I was, I think it was in 78, we met. And then we finally moved to the United States. She's from Iowa and studied at the University of Iowa in 83. I just went along. That was my first experience with the United States. In Iowa City, I just thought, okay, I'll just practice and see what's going on. And I got so involved in the music department and basically studied there for 1 year, big band mainly, without really being a student. They just let me in and I could rehearse.
Oh, how cool is that?
So that was really cool. I wasn't even officially a student, and they said, oh, you can play in the big band, and we toured all over and played concerts and stuff. And then also we got married there, moved back to Germany, but then this idea about the school grew bigger and bigger. And so eventually I decided to go to the school in 1985. And my wife, Kate, she never wanted to go to LA. And I said, it's an intensive year. We'll go there for 1 year and then we can move somewhere else again. And so we moved to Los Angeles in 85. I started the school and this was the best year in my life. I mean, I
Oh,
was in
wow.
heaven. It's right on Hollywood Boulevard, and the best teachers, the amazing school, and so I really enjoyed and having one-on-one, with, like I said, I mean, Joe Pass came in, Pat Metheny, all the great musicians. It was like 6 days a week nonstop, from morning till night. After that 1 year, I promised my wife to go back, but I said I don't want to go, and so I started in bass for another year. She, meanwhile, went to UCLA, and so we decided to stay there longer. Well, I studied bass for another year and started teaching guitar instead of paying tuition. It was just a trade, and that was really great. And well, we ended up staying in LA for 15 years.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
Yeah, she got her PhD in German, and I taught at the Musicians Institute from 86 till 93 or 94. So we had actually a great time, but after 15 years, then it was time to move on. But the interesting thing is, so there was the music, and I played concerts all over. We played every weekend in Beverly Hills, Brazilian music. I met, of course, people from all over the world teaching there, recording and performing. Oh, then what happened in that year when I studied music, I had this leather bag my wife gave me in Germany, and it was a natural, like, skin color leather bag. Everybody had one, school children, workers, just nice, simple bag, and I loved that bag. And so when I went to school in Hollywood, everywhere people stopped me on the street and said, "Oh, this is a nice bag. Where is this from?" And I said, "Well, I got it in Germany." And after this happened again and again, I thought, well, let me do some research here. And I went to the malls and looked around, and the only place I found was a store in Beverly Hills, and this was a German company, Brie. They had these natural leather bags, and the prices were like 3 times as much as what we paid in Germany. And I thought, wow, there could be a possibility to do something. So anyway, I did some research. I found a factory which was in East Germany at that time. This was before the wall came down. And I found a company there, a leather company, ordered some bags, and it was the biggest disappointment when they came. It was split leather. It didn't look like that, at all. And I was
Oh,
like, oh
no.
my God, that's not what I wanted, And so then I think the following year I went to the leather show near Frankfurt in Offenbach, and I did some more research. So eventually I found the factory where this German company Brie produced their products in Poland. These were all Polish bags, actually. I got in contact with the factory, and that was the right product I wanted. And so I started importing first through a wholesaler in Germany, and then directly from 2 factories in Poland, and later on in the Czech Republic as well. So that's how this got started. But the funny thing is, it was still the time I was at school. My wife was at UCLA, and we lived in UCLA student housing. And that's where I started selling these bags. And we had
Oh, wow.
Very
all
smart.
all closets were full of bags, and people called and said, "Can I come over tonight?" And we made an appointment, and then we dug out these bags and showed it to them, and people loved them. There was no other store, nothing.
Isn't that very
And
soft leather,
well,
Chris?
it's more a belting leather, like a saddle
Yes,
leather,
yes. Uh-huh.
real solid leather, but
Mhm.
real simple. And so people really liked them, and the price was good. And well, eventually then, I think in 89, I opened up a store in Westwood, a real small store in a courtyard. People came from all over. I advertised it at universities, UCLA, USC, and then the UC, LA Weekly. Yeah, the newspaper LA Weekly had always had ads in there. And we had movie stars coming, and all kind of people to this tiny little store. And it just grew. And then eventually I opened up a second store in Studio City, I think in 93. But that was just the time when LA went in a recession. And I had that
Mm.
second store only for 1.5 years, and it didn't make it. Then I closed that one again. But during all that time, I was still teaching 2 days a week at the Musicians Institute. So it was actually a crazy time to have two stores and teach and play every weekend.
Oh, I can
So,
imagine.
but it was, we were young, and
Luckily, you were
you know,
young.
so now I
Yeah.
can't imagine that anymore, but that was the time, so it was really, and of course business was good, and it was growing. At the same time, then I think in 1990, I started to do trade shows and wholesale the items to other retailers. So I went to trade shows, the LA gift show, San Francisco gift show. And over the years, I did the magic show in Las Vegas twice a year, in Seattle, and New York, and Chicago. I mean, it was crazy,
Yeah. And trade
having.
shows are exhausting. I mean, that's a big
Well, now
commitment.
I'm more in the retirement age, and I look back and it's like, how did I do that?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so sometimes you at a certain point you can't imagine certain things anymore. So, but the wholesale business grew, and I was doing a lot of corporate gift for a long time in LA for Disney and other companies. I did a thing for the movie The Horse Whisperer.
I love that movie.
Yeah, and also the movie The Next Best Thing. So, and the corporate gift world was a real stressful world, because they inquired and didn't make a decision, and then finally they made a decision for the Horse Whisperer, for example, and said we need 3,000 harnesses. They had a blanket with a Horse Whisperer on it, and they wanted me to make the harness to kind of carry that blanket like on a horse, with a strap.
Wow.
And so they ordered 3,000 and said, but we need this in 3 weeks. And
Oh,
it
my.
was always totally stressful. And in this particular case, it's a funny story. I got the products the day before their release party. And of course,
Oh,
if you miss that day, you're out of
it's
luck.
all over.
You
Yeah,
you
you're
owe
out.
the 3,000 and they don't
You're
pay
out.
you.
Yeah.
And
Oh
I
my gosh.
drove to the airport, picked up these harnesses, and custom noticed they were not stamped made. At that time, actually, it was a different factory in India. It was not stamped made in India. And they said, these have to be stamped. I took this whole load home overnight, stamped all the items with a stamping machine, took it there the next day, and they approved it, and I could deliver, So, but it was always a lot of stress with corporate gift business, and I don't
Yeah,
do
you
any.
were sweating bullets with those saddles, right?
It was really, yeah. And I used to sell to Capella catalog companies and stuff, So,
Wow, you're
but
just a really good business person, and not coming from a background in that before you started. I mean, you were a musician. That's pretty amazing that you had that success with that.
well, there was a little bit. My dad, when I grew up, when I was 12, he had a retail store, a jewelry store, and watches and
Oh,
stuff like that. So I mean, I had
so that helps.
some connection to
Mm-hmm.
that. And actually, when I was 20, I had another company with a friend. He traveled the world and found American Indian silver jewelry. And so
Mm.
we imported that and sold that for like 2-3 years, and built some idea about business too.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing also, there's always the music and there's the business. It's easy for me to sell a product I like. It's
Mm-hmm.
much harder to sell my music because it's so personal.
You're so critical of
Oh,
yourself.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, critical, and you go like, I don't know, is that so good? Is that this? And I can't really promote it well with a business product. I like the product; it's a good product. it feels easy, just to offer that and make a sale. With the music,
Mhm.
it's too personal, so
I understand that, Chris. I used to sell my own recordings. They were
yeah.
mostly children's recordings at the time. That's where I was
Oh,
selling
I
them. But
see.
so when I'd make my own sales calls, I remember one person saying to me one time, "Oh, an artist peddling his own wares," and it
Yeah,
is hard because what do you say? I am so wonderful. You must buy this.
yeah.
It's difficult.
It's really very difficult. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So,
Hmm.
well, I mean, and at the same time, the interesting thing with the music, of course, being in LA with the studios and the best musicians, and I did 2 CDs recorded there. The interesting thing about the teaching was that I met students from all over the world. I mean, they came from Brazil, from Asia, from South America, all over, from Europe. And so at one point I had a student from Brazil, he was my private guitar student, and real nice guy, very musical. Then he invited me once to play a little gig, play jazz at a cafe in Beverly Hills, Cafe Connection. After we played there a couple of times, his wife from Brazil, she said to Carlos, "Why don't you play your music?" And I said to Carlos, "What is your music?" And suddenly he came out. He was an amazing composer and a singer and a songwriter, Brazilian bossa novas and jazz, Brazilian jazz. So from then on, we just played his music, and we did a CD and recorded, and we played all over the place, Brazilian music. And it was an interesting thing that actually through my private student, I was then basically his student and learned the Brazilian music from him, playing every weekend. That was really great to be in Los Angeles at that time, for both, for the music and the business. Well,
Maybe this would be a good time to play a little bit of your music. Could you
sure.
lead us into this track that we're going to listen to? I know it's from an unreleased CD that is new.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll play a little bit.
Well, the one song is called Cascade Terrace. And there's a little story with that. My wife is from Iowa, and every summer we go back, or went back to her parents and stayed there. And I usually stayed 1 week, and they had a nice grand piano, and I had time, no business, and so I often wrote some songs on that grand piano. And they live on this road, Cascade Terrace, so that's why I called it. And I often
Oh, that's a
dedicate
great
this.
name.
I dedicate that to my father-in-law, who passed away last year, and my mother-in-law, who are the greatest people I know in my life, knew in my life. And they live in Burlington, right on the Mississippi. So that song is called Cascade Terrace. And
Let's listen to a little bit of it, and then you can tell
okay,
us about the
yeah,
other one later.
yeah.
Here we go. Cascade
Okay.
Terrace. That was really beautiful. And there were so many different instruments on that track. I know you play, let's see, you've named, I see the bass behind you. So there's the bass. I know guitar is your master instrument. And then you mentioned you write on the piano. How many instruments do you play, and how many were you playing in the track we listened to?
Well, on that track, I was a guitar player. I wrote all the songs. We have, I think, 11 songs on that CD, and I wrote all the songs. Again, there was my mistake not promoting it right, because we recorded it quite a while ago, and my sister's working on the artwork right now. But the thing is, these musicians are amazing. The sax player is Paul McCandless. He's a Grammy Award-winning sax player. He played with the band Oregon and Ralph Towner and Bela Fleck, and so he toured the world for 40 years, and he lives here in Healdsburg, which is just amazing.
Oh, wow.
I had on bass Bob Magnuson, who lives down in San Diego, and he was a teacher at the Musicians Institute. He came up from San Diego to record. The piano player, Randy Porter, he was down in San Diego, but he lives in Portland and came for the recording. And Lorca Hart on drums. He is the son of Billy Hart, which is a legend in jazz, and it's his son who plays the drums on this recording. And we rehearsed 2 days at my house here in Healdsburg, and then went to the studio about 2.5 days. And it was just basically a studio live recording, I mean, you can nowadays, a lot of the pop stuff is often there is not even a band together, I mean, they play one track and overdub something else. This was basically a live jazz recording in the studio. There were a few things we fixed later, but more technically than musically. So I thought it came out really well, and it's time to release it. So
I
That's
agree.
wonderful.
That's beautiful.
I'm so glad
Do
you
you
got
think-
it out.
I know you teach a bunch of these different instruments. Do you think there's an easiest instrument to learn, would you say, or is it different for everybody?
Well, I mean, every instrument has its positive and negative sides. One thing is totally clear. I mean, I play guitar now for 50 years, and there are still things which are not clear to me, because of the tuning and stuff you get. And it's like, how could that be after 50 years? Whereas the piano is such a logical instrument. You learn one octave and it's repeated. On the guitar, you play a chord down there and you go 5 frets up and it looks totally different. And you go up 5 frets, and it's because of the different tuning of the strings, and you have to kind of differentiate. If you take a blues rock player where it's pretty limited harmonically, it's just a blues scale, a minor scale, or a dominant scale, that's relatively easy to get somewhere. And we all did this type of music when I started learning Beatles songs and Stones and blues and things like that. You can get fairly good pretty quickly. But once you dig into deep harmony in jazz or Brazilian or classical music, and it's a total different thing,
So much you can learn and expand, isn't there?
Always constantly
Yeah.
learning. Yeah.
Do you think that the reason that people who love jazz is that partly because of the improvisational aspect of it? Because if you did your recording another time, I'm sure it wouldn't turn out the same, because there's so much freeform in it.
Sure. Yeah, I would think so. It's that interaction. You don't know, the audience don't know what's happening in the next moment. And we as musicians, that's a good point you're making. After we recorded this, and I went back a couple of weeks, a month later, and after I listened to it, and of course I get frustrated and go like, oh, I should have done this better and this better. And I thought going back and replaying some solos. And I was in the studio again with my guitar at 11 in the morning and tried and went like, this is ridiculous. When you play together, you react to what the drummer does or the bass player. Or so it's
not
like
the same by yourself.
And so to go back and play a solo now where there is no interaction I have to interact or just play over what these musicians played then 2 months ago.
Yeah.
So, and I went like, you know what? I know it's not perfect, but I rather have that feel and leave it this way
Right.
instead of overdubbing and doing this. And so, I went like, okay, I'll live with this. The feel is good. There are some little things as a musician I hear and go like, this could have been better. But I still feel better leaving it the way we recorded it at that time,
I agree, Chris. You brought up an interesting point too about how you re-listen to stuff and how people can be so self-critical of their own work, so to say, and think they're missing something else. But the people that listen to it for the first time don't know that it should be better. That's the thing we all have to look past,
Oh yeah.
And yeah. And more important, as Chris said, is that interaction, and you're just playing off each other. It's like you're speaking to each other in music. So
it's really happening. And when you listen closely to the CD, you hear the drummer did something and I reacted, or the sax player or whatever, because he did that,
Right.
And it's in a fraction of a second where you just interact with that, and that's what live music is, or live recording.
Also, your music is very colorful and uplifting. What inspires you with all these ideas and thoughts?
The interesting thing is that most of the tunes I composed, and that's something for me, the composing was actually the easiest part for me in music, period. I mean, we recorded actually on this CD, we recorded some tunes I wrote when I was 15, 16. I played it on the piano and I had a little cassette. I had no clue about jazz harmony or composition or anything. I just sat at the piano, played this recording, and went like, oh, that sounds neat. And finally, after 40 years later, we recorded this song. And I was amazed about the interesting, complicated harmonies in that tune. It's like, how did I do that? I had no clue. But you just sit and play some keys and you go like, oh, that's nice. And you play the next chord and you write a melody and so that comes easily to me, or like I said, the student in Iowa, I wrote Cascade Terrace. You just sit at the piano, or 2 years ago, I was in Iowa and bought a little acoustic guitar because I didn't have one. And I wrote another song. It's not on the CD yet, but I think the number one thing is no stress in order to write. And having time, because sometimes I write a tune maybe in half an hour, and next time it takes 2 months, you write it and you go back and I have recordings where I started something and I go like, oh, one day I want to finish this tune. And so you never know. But
yeah, I've had that same experience. Sometimes it's just like you wake up and it's just there. And then other times you have something you're supposed to write and you just can't get it right. And you try and try and try it, maybe eventually, but it's forced. It doesn't come so easily. I'm not schooled like you are, not even close, but
it doesn't matter, and it's just the inspiration.
Yes. But the best musician I ever worked with, because I didn't follow patterns, sometimes I'd do something kind of off what was expected. And he just loved it. He'd go, I just love that. It's so weird. So exactly. He liked when I didn't follow the rules.
Yeah. Well, it's true. If I listen to the radio and it's 1-6-2-5 progression or whatever, we all know 1-4-5, and I can't even listen. I mean, this might be a nice song, and suddenly there is this one note or one chord, and it's like, wow, that was interesting.
That's how he was.
Interval or a chord or something. So and it was also interesting. I mean, like I said, this Grammy Award-winning sax player, Paul McCandless, he lives in Healdsburg. This nice thing. He comes to the shop. We used to play here sometimes. And actually, a couple of years ago, we were here in this office here, and we were talking about composing, and I said, since I have 3 kids, it seems like I can't write anything anymore. We talked about this, and he said, I think you just gotta make yourself and say, I'm writing a tune. And then the next couple of days I thought, maybe he's right. And I sat down and I wrote a tune that's also on the CD. I didn't send that to you, but that's also on the.
Wow.
So it can also work when you force yourself,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So speaking to you before the show, you've mentioned how things have changed performing live music. And you did mention there's one positive from it, that you can kind of see more people can tune in from maybe people that couldn't have been there live. But how do you see performances in the future, so to say?
Well, I mean, we all definitely hope that we are going back to live performance, but I think the internet, of course, and Zoom kind of thing, will be a part of the future too, and I think, like, we are in this difficult time with COVID, whether it's business or personal or whatever. I think we also have to see some positive aspect what's coming out of that,
Exactly.
And I mean, for example, I always loved Chick Corea, was always a Chick Corea fan, and I met him also when I was in LA or in teaching in southern France. And when we had COVID, when I closed down my shop in April, May, I decided, well, let's clean up the shop and sort everything, I never did. And I turned on Facebook and I found this thing about Chick Corea teaching or actually practicing live. And I meant, like, I gotta listen to that. And every day he just goes in his home studio, and he practices and talks a little bit about it, but it was pretty much him practicing. And then he says, well, I have to practice this, and I have a classical concert coming up, and I got to practice it. And I thought, how amazing, we would have never, I'm sure he would have never done that. But because of COVID, they're sitting at home, and everybody thinks, what could I do, to be in music and in contact with the audience, So I feel there are also good things happening, as bad as it is, so.
Yeah, that's a good point, Chris.
Yeah,
so we've all been so fascinated with your music. I hope we paid enough attention to your shop in Healdsburg, because we'd like people to know about your wonderful bags and how colorful they are. So could you give a little plug about your store?
Okay. Well, like I said, we moved to Healdsburg in 2000. And at that time, before I closed my stores in LA, and I only did wholesale trade shows and stuff. And we bought a house in Healdsburg, and I was looking around here. I found this location here and met Mr. Banda, who was the owner of the building, and an amazing person, amazing price for that. But I just moved here, and I was just on the way to a trade show in Las Vegas. And I said to Mr. Banda, I know I like this space, but I can't make this decision today. So I'll go do this trade show and come back. Well, when I came back, it was leased. And I'm like, oh my God, this was such a good deal and stuff. Anyway, I kept writing him every 3 months, and I said, if it gets available. And after 2 years, he called me back and said, the lady moved out. And so I took the space. And that was the greatest decision, because the landlord was also in COVID. Miss Bender, she's 94. It's an amazing lady and helpful. And so I opened up the store, and I had it for 18 years. And of course, I still have my products, but I buy from companies from all over the world. The Italian manufacturer from South America, from Poland, from the United States, from Asia. And the interesting thing is, the reason why I stopped doing wholesale, because all the stores closed down, one after the other, leather stores. You still have some luggage stores and boutiques, but so a lot of people who come in the store, they say, wow, this looks like in Italy, you know, where you really have leather goods stores. So again, whoever is listening, you can go on Google and type in Chris Foley Fine Leather, and then you see a picture of the store, and you can click on that, and you do a walkthrough, and you can move it around. You see my base in there too, and
Mm-hmm. So they could
everything
call
can.
you and tell you, I like that bag that looks like this.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
And so all the information, of course, is on there on Google. You know, if they Google Chris Foley Fine Leather, and people, you know, they come from all over. You know, Healdsburg is wine country, so there are tourists from wherever. You know, and
Yeah.
a lot of people, they come from New York and come every year, and they come back to the store and buy something. You know, so it's right now, of course, it's really difficult. You know, I mean, a lot of stores in Healdsburg closed down already. Knock on wood, I'm still there, and think I will be there. But also thank to my landlord, you know, who is really flexible and helping out. You know, yeah, we carry a lot of. I mean, we carry everything from a keychain to wallet to purses, backpacks, duffel bags. I carry Briggs and Riley luggage, you know, and Italian manufacturer Bosca. That's an old American company, but they always use Italian leather. Tony Peretti, and so we have luggage, but it's mainly leather goods. But Briggs and Riley is a great luggage company, and some Eagle Creek as well. You know.
What wonderful holiday gift idea, because
Yeah.
these
Sure.
bags probably last forever.
Yeah, that's sometimes the problem, you know.
Oh, yeah, I could see that
Yeah.
from your point of view. Yes,
Yeah,
they're so
people
well
come
made.
and say, I bought this Bosca wallet 20 years ago, and I'm
Right.
gonna get a new one, but it still
But
looks good.
Your
You know?
things come in a lot of colors, and
Yeah.
so, you know, if you're a lady, at
Right.
least you need the different colors to go with the different
Sure.
clothes. So
Yeah, we have
yeah.
what actually Marty, Alan,
Mm-hmm.
and Mike, they're wonderful people. They live in my neighborhood also, and they always come and buy something.
Oh,
And she likes that brand, My Wallet. It's an Italian manufacturer, but they use different colors within the product. And it's really rainbow colors and, you know, beautiful products, you know. So
she's got good taste. Yeah.
yeah, I carry a lot of them.
I have to ask you a real estate question. So how did you end up in Healdsburg? What makes your life beautiful in Healdsburg? How did that was your destination point?
Well, like I said, although I had my best years when I went to school in LA, and I had a good time in LA, but after 15 years, we really felt like we want to leave. You guys are in Santa Barbara, aren't you?
David is, and
Yes.
I used to be. I'm in the
Oh,
Sedona area now.
oh,
So
it's Sedona.
mhm.
For a while, we were actually looking at Santa Barbara, moving to Santa Barbara, and I looked at.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, this was maybe, well, in 1995 or something, and I looked at stores, and I used to sell to some leather stores in Santa Barbara too. But anyway, so we just felt like small town Northern California is more what we want. Every time I did a trade show in San Francisco, I drove up to this area and looked around in Napa and Calistoga and you know, Sebastopol, and we really liked Healdsburg, and they were just developing a new area north end of town. And so we bought a house there in 2000. And the main reason also was we wanted to raise the kids in a smaller town.
Yeah.
Then at the end, when we were in LA, we lived in Oak Park, Agora Hills area.
Mhm.
It was nice there, and my wife taught at Pepperdine University, but it still was bedroom community. You know,
Mhm.
people come home, drive in the garage, and you don't see the neighbors. And we're like, no, that's not us, you know.
Mhm.
And Healdsburg is such a loving town, you know, and there's tourists, but they're the local people, and you have the farmers market and farmers fair, future farmers fair, and it's just beautiful, you know. And our kids went to schools, great public schools, and so it's a great place. And of course, people come from all over the world to do their wine tasting, and you know, so.
Yeah. Well, we're so happy you found your happy place. You know, before we leave today, we'll say goodbye, but we'd like you to lead us into the other track, Jazzy Wonders, and tell us how that one came about.
Okay, that one, actually my sister gave it the title. You know, it's kind of funny, and I'm not even 100% sure what she envisioned with that, but when like, okay, it's a little bit more pop jazz or so, you know, but it's also a tune I wrote for the whole CD, you know, and it came pretty easily to me. And I wrote that on the piano again too. It seems like just sit at the piano and just press keys, you know, and it sounds great, you know, and then of course develop and remember what you do. So the basic tune I wrote on piano, and then I, you know, wrote out the charts and the details on the guitar, and so I was really blessed then to have all these professional musicians. I mean, they're all, you know. Meanwhile, I think Bob Magnuson is retired in San Diego, and Randy Porter, he's still active in Portland. Of course, everybody sitting at home right now, you know, so not touring. But I was really pleased to have all these musicians, you know. I want to thank them for their input and being really with it, you know. So,
beautiful. Let's enjoy Jazzy Wonders. That was such a pleasure having you today. Is there, you have any of your music for sale, by the way?
Actually, the best address and phone number is the business, you know. I have here, I sell it in the store, of course, and anybody can call or write or visit the store. And that's actually where I sell more CDs than on gigs. So, you know, people come in and buy it. It's right on the counter there and stuff, you know.
Great.
All right.
Chris, thanks so much for coming on the show. It seems like you really built a lot of relationships in the Healdsburg community and really ingrained yourself and have a lot of long-lasting relationships, and really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story.
And I hope people will tune in next week, because we have a holistic physician lined up. And boy, David, we're going to have lots of questions, aren't we?
I'm very excited for that. I definitely am.
And even does acupuncture. So that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, this is going to be amazing. So look forward to seeing you next week, Patty, and let's give it a go.
Me too. Take care next week.
All right. Bye, Patty.
Bye, David.